No one ends up stagnant in life because they want to be. We end up stagnant in life because the unknown is scary. More than anything, what weighs us down internally are the thoughts that our fear, shame, past, and insecurities create. We must pay close attention to what is taking place inside of our souls. If we found ourselves unable to choose faith over fear, then we know about the hunger that accompanies those stagnant moments before you can move forward. Instead of focusing on the what ifs, my goal is to help you understand how your thoughts control your actions. Deep enough to discover the question that destabilized you in the first place. What question has your soul been trying to answer? Hey guys, how are you all doing? Welcome and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, like the video, leave a sweet comment on the comment section. Let me know what you think about the video. And if you're a chicken, thank you so much for always coming back to check up on your girl to know how your girl is doing. As you can see, your girl is doing fantastic. I'm doing okay. So guys, today marks day 3 of, you guys told me I should call it story time session. So today marks our day 3 of our story time session, and I hope you enjoyed today's story time session. Okay. So guys, make sure you subscribe if you haven't, and also guys, I want to thank you so much for the engagement you guys have been giving me. Okay, I want to appreciate it, and thank you guys so much. Thank you so much. Okay. So today we are in part 2 of our book, and the heading is Know Better. Now the serpent, sorry about that. Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, has God indeed said, you shall not eat of every tree of the garden? That is Genesis chapter 3 verse 1. My husband, Ture, and I live in Los Angeles. He's lived here most of his life. I've only been here 6 years. Ture's status as a long-time resident of LA has granted him unprecedented knowledge of back roads and shortcuts that he uses to avoid the horrendous traffic. In fact, he knows 6 or 7 ways to get across town. On the other hand, I know how to use the navigation app on my phone. I can't begin to tell you how many minutes I have been stuck in the traffic while Ture awaited my arrival. I look in the distance and see the unpredictable sea of red lights, and my stomach drops. I watch the arm on my speedometer slowly lose momentum until I'm at a complete standstill. Stopped and frustrated, I immediately pull out my phone and consult the Waze app to see how delayed I will actually be. If being late is hereditary, then I'm certain it was passed down to me from my mother. And well, God is still working on me in this area. 9 times out of 10, I leave the house with just enough time to arrive, but not enough time to park, let alone walk in. With intentional driving, not to be confused with speeding and Waze, I can almost ensure that I'm close to on time, but not embarrassingly late. Embarrassingly late. Given my husband's knowledge of the city, I make it a rule to give him a quick call before blindly obeying Waze. When I tell him I plan to use Waze, he asks me to screenshot the route ways is taking me. Without fail, his phone has barely chimed in the receipt of the screenshot when I hear his exaggerated voice declaring, "No, no, 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 no. Waze doesn't know what he's talking about. I'm from this city. Hop off on the next exit, make a left on Ventura, and head north on the Sepulveda. When you get to the Burbank, head east. Then hop back on the 101 and you should know your way from there." You know that Waze is doing, you know what Waze is doing while my husband is defaming its notoriety? Homegirl is speaking to me in the calmest English accent. I made my Waze fancy. She is patiently waiting for me to make one simple turn. She is not inducing anxiety by trying to give me all the directions at once. She is also obviously aware that I'm directionally challenged. So there are no intimidating words like north, south, east, or west. Now I'm stressed. Waze is waiting for me, but my husband, who is well versed in the city, is insisting he knows a better route. Internally, I'm weighing my options. Do I take my husband's directions, or do I tell him that I'm stressed and would rather spend some time with my homegirl Waze? I've only got a split second to make a decision before I miss the opportunity to exit and come to another screeching halt in the blessed LA traffic. The pressure is mounting and the clock is ticking. I have two competing routes ahead of me, with the added element that failure to make a decision will undoubtedly result in me being stuck and late. I wish choosing between Waze or Trace routes was the most difficult dilemma in my life. I frequently find myself standing at a challenging crossroads, questioning which path to take. So it's like a subtitle. We have a choice. So that's a subtitle. Have you been there? Life's crossroads are a bit more complicated than choosing what to do in traffic. Too often they feel like gambling. And heaven forbid, if you've ever experienced the trauma of miscalculating a risk, it's even more challenging to finalize your decisions. I think we can all agree that it would be exponentially easier to quit a job if we knew that living would result in a successful career. And choosing vulnerability would be a no-brainer if we were assured it would not end in hurt. As frustrating as it might be to have to choose between two traffic routes in the crossroads moments, that decision pales in comparison to navigating the multi-lane highway that is my mind. Chill. That's an actual struggle. At least when I'm in LA traffic, I know my destination. I have an approximate idea of how long it will take me to get there and how much fuel the trip will require. When I'm at one of life's crossroads, I am tasked with making a decision with almost no information. I'm expected to make a decision that will lead me to an unspecified location through an unfamiliar place. I never have any idea how much time, rest, hope, energy, or faith I'll need to get there. This is the moment my anxiety buckles up in the backseat and begins making unnecessary commentary. You should have never started this journey to begin with. You know, if you fail, it's going to prove what everyone has been thinking about you. Did I mention my past is hog-tied in the trunk, demanding to know if we've arrived at a place of complete peace and confidence? Then Then there's my sweet little mustard seed faith in the passenger seat whispering, be patient. Somewhere in the distance, my future is waiting while I muster enough strength to finally get my life moving. Meanwhile, my present is frozen behind the steering wheel, trying to determine if I can perform under these conditions. No one ends up stagnant in life because they want to be. We end up stagnant in life because the unknown is scary. Subconsciously, we believe that choosing to live in a perpetual state of indecision is better than making the wrong decision. Indecision is defined as the inability to make a decision quickly. It's easy to move quickly when you aren't burdened down. But when you're heavy, you can't move as quickly. More than anything, what weighs us down internally are the thoughts that our fear, shame, past, and insecurities create. Hmm. If we could peek inside the mind of a person experiencing indecision, we would see that generally they aren't suffering from a lack of vision, but rather the cloudiness that comes with playing out too many potential outcomes of that vision. Eventually, everything becomes cloudy and they lose the passion, creativity, and precision necessary to activate their next step. If you read those last sentences and said amen, then you can relate completely to the mental exhaustion that comes with um, navigating the thoughts, emotions, and questions that comes with being stuck. Will it be worth it? Do I have what it takes? Can I get it done? Do I open up or do I remain closed? Do I try again or do I avoid the pain of disappointment? Do I stay or do I go? If you've ever found yourself weighing any of the aforementioned thoughts or questions regarding your life, it's not as simple as comparing two options. The endless potential consequences of those options play out in your mind until all you want to do is nothing at all. The mind becomes the arena where thoughts dwell to the finish. Each thought competes to take the lead and run our lives. We think one day the competition will reveal a winner, but in reality, it's a never ending battle until we actively intervene and make a decision. The whirlwind of thoughts often blinds us from recognizing that they really have only two origins. They are birthed either from our faith or from our fear. Our fears pretend to keep us safe. Our faith demands we draw on courage we aren't sure we possess. If fear didn't feel so comfortable and faith wasn't so expensive, decision would vanish and confidence would emerge. What do you do when fear and faith speak to you at the same time? The answer to this question for many is simple: nothing. We often find a way to accept the duality of fear and faith as normal and therefore continue to live conflicted and stuck. Interestingly, from the outside looking in, you'd never be able to tell someone is stuck. Most of us can go about our daily routines, working, cooking, posting, loving, laughing, socializing, and producing as if nothing is wrong. We become envious of other people who seemingly, I'm so sorry guys. We become envious of other people who seemingly do not struggle with being decisive. Of course, just because it seems like someone can make tough decisions doesn't mean their life is progressing. True progression can only be accurately gauged by how a person has expanded in wisdom, knowledge, and vulnerability on the inside, not what they have amassed externally. I've always imagined that when people are taking a leap of faith, they're taking off from one cliff to another, like watching a movie. I can imagine their legs spread wide, heart, heart full of faith, and spirit full of determination as they pursue the destination ahead of them. While it's dramatic and scenic, I've been envisioning it all wrong. A true leap of faith doesn't have a valley separating us from our next destination, but we do have to leap over a heap of fear and insecurity. As much as we want to possess the type of faith that allows us to take off with no problem, what if we land smack dab in the middle of our worst fears? I can't tell you how many times I've had conversations with people who wanted to move, leave their jobs, start a business, go back to school, or take countless leaps of faith, but were too afraid they wouldn't be successful. They looked at all the fear based outcomes that could occur and chose to stay still, to stay still instead of leap. Staying still would have been easy, but on the inside they couldn't quite quiet the voice of faith daring them to take a leap. That's why we must pay close attention to what is taking place inside of our souls. If we found ourselves unable to choose faith over fear, then we know about the hunger that accompanies those stagnant moments. On the inside, we are hungry for more and longing for a consistent state of fulfillment in every area of our lives. That hunger and longing is our spirit shaking up complacency so we can become desperate for the more that has been assigned to our names. Know your environment. I'm giving you permission. I'm giving you permission to stop berating yourself for not being able to push forward. Instead, dissect your thoughts to help you discover the beauty of the unknown. The beauty in the unknown, I'm so sorry. But before we get started, I need you to understand that trust in the unknown is not the result of having answers to every question that plagues your mind. Trust in the unknown is a belief that progress and unanswered answered questions can coexist. When you don't believe the two can coexist, you're not trapped because you don't want to grow. You are trapped because you think you need all the answers before you can move forward. Instead of focusing on the what ifs, my goal is to help you understand how your thoughts control your actions so you can determine which thoughts are worthy of taking up real estate in your mind. To analyze our thoughts, we must discover the environment that produced them in the first place. Thoughts are seeds. When tended to properly, those thoughts begin to take root and ultimately produce fruit. The fruit is our actions. Is our actions the essence of our existence and how we present ourselves to the world around us? Our character, confidence, integrity, loyalty, and work ethic all derive from thoughts that began as mere seeds. The process from thought to seed to fruit is a cycle. The cycle is the same whether we are teenaged or middle-aged. The environment determines whether the cycle benefits or destroys us. Environment comes from the French words environ, which means surrounding. Any botanist will tell you that certain plants cannot grow in certain environments. That's why it's important to recognize the environment or the surroundings that cultivated the thought. You know your thoughts, and maybe you even know your actions. But have you considered your environment and how it's contributed to your thoughts and actions? Humanity began as a thought in God's mind, but before He planted us, He formed the environment because He recognized that for us to thrive, we need to be in surroundings that will allow us to flourish. When the serpent engaged Eve, it appears he simply tried to get her to eat fruit. But this ultimate goal was to overthrow the environment God created. Genesis 3:1 tells us everything we need to know about how the serpent was able to derail the woman from staying planted in the purpose God gave her. The New King James Version reads, "Now the serpent was more cunning than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. And he said to the woman, Has God indeed said, You shall not eat of every tree of the garden?" I don't know about you, but when I seek to define the word cunning, I envision villains from suspense thriller movies I've seen. I'm taking Anthony Hopkins, as in the movie fracture type villains. With this definition in mind, I feel like the serpent should have disguised the fruit in another fruit. Or maybe tricked the woman while she was sleeping. But he didn't use any of the tricks I expected. Instead, he used the woman's mind against her by injecting a question that destabilized her world. Let's reread the sentence. Instead, he used the woman's mind against her by injecting a question that destabilized her world. The serpent used the woman's mind against her. He injected a question that changed everything she knew. That one question changed her environment. We spend a lot of time talking about external forces external forces working against us. But I want to challenge you to consider that perhaps your greatest enemy lies between your ears. Have you ever considered that your mind could be working against you and not for you? If your thoughts aren't helping you become wiser, more compassionate, focused, and disciplined, then what is it making you become? The serpent doesn't need to use any of the fancy tricks depicted in the movies because the power of this one question is enough for Eve's mind to start inching further and further away from God's vision for her life. We all know the story. Eve told the serpent that they were allowed to eat the fruit from any tree in the garden except one, the tree in the middle. In fact, they were not even to touch it or they would die. But, long story short, the serpent's line of questioning changed the environment of her mind, moving her from the certainty of what she believed God said to uncertainty. She took some fruit and ate it. Not only that, she gave some to her husband, and he ate it too. When given the opportunity to explain to God what happened when she ate from the tree, Genesis 3:13 tells us that Eve said, "The serpent deceived me and I ate." Strong Concordance explains that the word deceived in the original Hebrew manuscript was actually a notion, a primitive root meaning to lead astray. i.e., mentally to delude or morally to seduce, beguile, deceive greatly, utterly. It's easy to think of Eve as foolish when we regard her decision as a split second one, but Eve was telling us in her own words that the journey from disciplined, safe, and protected didn't just happen overnight, it was a process. She reveals to us the seduction of sabotage. Sabotage is slow, stealthy, and patient. It doesn't need immediate results. It only needs a small corner of your heart, mind, or soul. Sabotage pokes a pin-sized hole in your faith, then waits patiently for it to completely deflate. If eating from the fruit was the final act, but the play began the moment the serpent poked a hole in what Eve held as truth. The more time she focused on what the serpent said, the less she focused on God's truth. The woman corrected the serpent with what she understood as the truth, but eventually she abandoned the truth to test the answer the enemy purposed. Eve wasn't even thinking about the fruit until the serpent asked that question. I propose that the environment that produced the negative, distracting thoughts that exist in your mind originated from an unanswered question that invaded your soul. Before Eve had the encounter with the serpent, all she knew was the environment God created for her. Genesis tells us over and over again in chapter 1 that the environment was good. All Eve knew was goodness. She didn't have to question whether or not God was good because everything in her world spoke to his goodness until it didn't. That moment in Genesis 3 is so monumental because it's the first time Eve must consider whether or not God is actually good. The serpent would have her believe that she and Adam are forbidden from eating the fruit because God is withholding greater knowledge from them. What do you do when experiences make you question whether God is good? Some of us are far too religious to ever truly admit it, but there are moments when we aren't so sure anymore. Of course, we don't want to appear ungrateful, but when we are burying a loved one, facing abuse, fighting a disease, or scraping resources together just to keep a roof over our head, a small corner of our soul wonders, is God good? If Jesus hanging on the cross asked God, how could you forsake me? Then there are moments when our human experiences and divine pursuits clash with such violence that we have no choice but to wonder whether our God is good. The cunning serpent didn't have to force Eve to eat the fruit any more than he had to force you or to make the choices we've made. All he had to do to change Eve's diet was change her environment by making her question the goodness of God. Okay. Eve went from a woman surrounded by the knowledge of who God created her to be in a world he created her to dominate, to a woman whose thoughts about God, her world, and her identity was changed. All because of a question. That one question didn't just change her thoughts and then ultimately her actions. That one question changed the thoughts and actions of every generation that would come through her. There will never be a generation afforded the safe haven of exclusive goodness that Eve experienced in the garden. Instead, we are born into a world where questioning the goodness of God is natural and establishing and maintaining faith requires a fight. We just finished the chapter. Okay. you are ready to dig into this with me, and I hope that you are, you need to access the parts of you that you don't often take the time to explore. In this case, that place in your heart that still feels unsure and heavy, no matter how much you've grown in your faith, we need we need to explore the thoughts that environment produce, as well as the place where you began questioning God's goodness, your goodness and the goodness of this world. The easiest and scariest place we will venture we will venture to is a place in our history where we first experienced unsettling disappointment. If I asked you to tell me your thoughts connected to feeling afraid, devalued, and ashamed, you could likely list those with awkward ease. After all, a version of those thoughts runs fearlessly and quietly in your mind throughout the day. This moment isn't about attacking those thoughts. Remember, I want us to examine the environment that nurtured and nourished those thoughts. Go deep enough to discover the question that destabilized you in the first place. What question has your soul been trying to answer? Why did you get stuck or merry-go-round on a merry-go-round? Let's attack that environment together. If you're not in a quiet space right now, it may be more beneficial to do this exercise when you have time to truly take a minute to yourself. Charlotte Stallings, a woman I admire deeply, taught me a breathing technique I'd like you to use for this moment. Inhale like you're smelling roses and exhale like you're blowing out a candle. Do that 3 times. Become one with the thoughts, emotions, and spirit, bringing them together and into focus. As you hop into your internal time machine, drive down memory lane. Keep breathing. Go back to a moment that stands out in your mind as when you felt the most stuck. It could be 10 years ago or an hour ago. Found it? Paint a picture in your head of your life in that moment. Who were your friends? Where were you living? How were you wearing your hair? We always remember our hair faces. Embody that vision of yourself. Feel those fears and hopes again. Allow those bright, scary, beautiful emotions to come back to you. Breathe in and breathe out as who you are. Wait, out as who you are, then comes into focus. Now ask yourself one simple question. What did I need to know? If you've been using a journal to accompany your thoughts, write down those things you needed to know. Personally, I needed to know I was, I was, okay, personally, I needed to know I was safe. I needed to know I wasn't alone. I needed to know I was loved. I needed to know that it was okay to still have hope. Next question. When was the first time you needed to know those things? Oh my gosh, I'll go first. When I began telling my story, I usually started with my teen pregnancy. That was the moment I deemed as my greatest shift. I was wrong. When I was 7 years old, my father, a pastor, felt led to move our children from West Virginia to Texas. There was many striking differences between Dallas, Texas, and Charleston, West Virginia. But the one that stands out most in my mind 20 plus years later occurred on our first Sunday in Dallas. Every Sunday in West Virginia, we sat with my mom. When we moved to Dallas, our seating arrangements changed. My parents sat on the platform behind the pulpit, while the other pastors, while my siblings and I sat with the congregation. Our church in West Virginia was a family church where everyone knew one another. Our first Sunday in Dallas, we had 1,500 visitors. I can still remember the sense of rejection, loneliness, and isolation I felt without my mom in that room full of people. When I look at that moment as an adult, I don't see it as a big deal, but the mere fact that I remember it vividly is a sign that it affected me in a deep way. Sometimes we look at moments in our history as small or inconsequential compared to the things other people face. But when something wounds you, it doesn't matter whether it would have wounded someone else. It's not wise to compare or minimize our pain because it doesn't feel significant compared to that of others. When we do this, we run the risk of not recognizing the moment that destabilized our confidence and identity. For me, this small, seemingly insignificant moment in church was when I first began to question my worth and value my worth. Do I belong here? That question became the environment where my thoughts lived. Confidence couldn't survive in that environment of the uncertainty. Faith couldn't establish roots with so much doubt beaming down. The only things that could thrive in that moment were insecurity, rejection, pain, and fear. I lived in that environment for so long that it became my mind's norm. I didn't realize my soul was still desperately trying to answer that question. I believed my actions were my own, but they were being fueled by the ache of questioning whether I belonged. I clung to any friendship, relationship, or opportunity that appeared to have the answer to that question. If I didn't fit into those friendships, relationships, or opportunities by being myself, I invented a version of me who could fit. There was no limit to how far I was willing to go to finally put that question to rest. See how that question altered my thoughts, and then those thoughts affected my actions. Subsequently, those actions painted one, a reality one that left me feeling fearful, ashamed, and weak. The cycle continued until one day when I stopped taking actions based on what I thought and instead began to activate the knowledge I obsessed. I want you to be confident, but not with a superficial confidence based on repeating a phrase over and over again in your mind. I want you to be confident because there are some things on the inside of your spirit that you know. Don't accept complacency with the unsure and insecure areas of your life. Attack that insecurity head on because you recognize it's keeping you from the security you need to gain authentic confidence. Guys, so today I want to be like, we finish like a whole chapter. Okay, so like when we start reading, we finish the whole chapter. So today, basically, reading the whole of chapter 2 of this book. So that's why it's a bit long, but you guys have to bear with me, okay? I wanna be like, when you start reading like the whole chapter, you have to complete that whole chapter before we proceed to the next chapter, okay? Confidence is the result of not only thinking good thoughts, but also of knowing truth and allowing that truth to change the way you show up in the world and improve your interaction with others. My goal is to help you realize not only who you are, but who you are in God. If I left you at discovering who you are, you may have moments when another question could invade your mind and derail your progress. However, if I can help you realize who you are in God, the question will become, but you will finally have an answer. If you are a fan of Oprah or just an avid member of any social media platform, you've likely seen a quote from civil rights activist, poet, and author Maya Angelou: "Do the best, do the best you can until you know better. Then, when you know better, do better." For some time, I struggled with this quote because I recognized how often my inner Eve knew better but it didn't do better. I underestimated the power of truly knowing something versus thinking something. My inner Eve struggled because she thought better but never turned what she thought into what she knew. It's one thing to think you deserve better and another to know you deserve better. When you begin to transform what you think into what you know, your actions will have no choice but to fall in line. Your actions are a direct reflection of what's taking place in your mind. For instance, when I begin thinking I should lose weight, I work out in the morning and eat cake at night. When I start knowing I should lose weight, I work out and I cut out sugar, carbs, and fried foods from my diet. Knowing flips a switch that allows me to resist the temptation of living as if I don't know better. Knowing produces nothing. If you're not doing, then conflicting thoughts in your mind are keeping you from activating what you know. When I mentor women, I noticed how they often explain how they feel or what they believe and then conclude by saying, "I don't know." Essentially, they know because they just told me, but with that one statement, they rob themselves of their ability to know what they actually know. Whether it's due to toxic relationship, an issue at work, or uncertainty about tomorrow, if you're one of those, "I don't know," consider this a personal challenge. Stop presenting your truth, feelings, and emotions and then dismissing them with "I don't know." Stop introducing a phrase that leaves room for uncertainty within your soul. There are going to be plenty of things that you truly know that you truly don't know. Don't add what you know to that list. By the way, expressing what you know doesn't confine you to living in that space for the rest of your life. Sometimes we are afraid to say what we know because we don't believe that we still have room to grow, change, and evolve. Transformation needs a starting point. We need to understand and be confident with what we know so we can begin the journey of discovering what we don't know. This book is about becoming more effective in discovering the version of you that God created to revolutionize the world. The serpent robbed Eve of her knowledge, but the serpent could not keep her from acquiring knowledge. Eve could have stayed planted in the field of her disappointment and shame. The serpent probably hoped that Eve would stay stuck there. We know that he desired that one moment in the garden to disconnect her from God forever. Little did he know that God would not leave his creation without an opportunity to transform their knowledge. Eve knew what she did, but she also knew what God said. Eve held on what God said when she was cast out of the garden. She hung on to what God said, even when she had to live with the consequences of her actions. Eve didn't simply allow what God said to become the compass of which she lived her life. She regained control of her mind, even if is my home girl, because she found a way to move beyond what happened to her to again become a good partner with God on earth. I don't know what forbidden fruit or disastrous question has entered your mind. I don't know what made you feel fragile on the inside, but I do know that before any of those things happened, God decided to partner with you on the earth. He still knows you're worthy, even if you don't see it. He still knows you can break generational curses and change the paradigms of your family or community culture. He still knows that you can subdue and have dominion. In Jeremiah 29:11, God gives us insight into how much He knows about His creation. "For I know the plans I have for you," declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not harm you, plans to give you hope and future. Did you notice the word no? God is telling his prophet in this text that he doesn't just wonder about his plans for us. He knows them. The question is, do you want to discover what God knows more than you want to be stuck in what you think? Are you willing to bend your thoughts and begin pursuing what God knows? If you can commit to pursuing God, your life will have no choice but to be revolutionized. If you're reading this, then there are some things you've known for a while. You've known that you need to get therapy, or you've known that you need to leave the relationship. You've known that you need to take a better care of your health. You've known that you need to be more disciplined with your time. You've known these things for so long that it's easier to ignore them than it is to activate and do something about them. I am praying right now that as you read and process your thoughts, God will begin to highlight the area of your life where you have been so distracted by the thoughts themselves. I am praying right now that as you read and process your thoughts, God will begin to highlight the area of your life where you have been so distracted by the thoughts themselves that you can't activate what you know. My experience with God has taught me that the more I activate what I know, the more He gives me vision and clarity for the unknown. You. Guys, I want to thank you so much for, I think one quote that I'm gonna leave you guys with before we end the video is, do the best, is a saying by Maya Angelou. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. That's gonna be our topic for today. So guys, thank you so much for reading, for watching this video. Please like the video, leave us a comment in the comment section, let me know what you think about the video. Until next time, you guys, bye.